All right, welcome, one and all, once more to the PCS Spring 2022 playoffs. I am Pyrotechnics, and I am joined by Nightstar for today's matchup for CFO taking on the likes of Meta Falcon team. Before we get into all of our pre-match analysis, I would like to take a moment to thank our wonderful sponsors, CTBC Bank and Caliber. Thank you for making the PCS possible. Also, a special shout out to our broadcast partners, Carry Live, Riot Games, and Garena for making this all happen. Now, Frank, I know you've been watching and waiting. We've had a whole week. We've had our first taste of the playoff action in a 3-1 victory for Deep Cross over Beyond Gaming last night. Now CFO taking on the 6th seed Meta Falcon team, the upstarts. See if they can pull an upset.
Yeah, that'll be the big question, right? Because this, contrary to what we saw yesterday, this feels a lot more like a David versus Goliath sort of matchup. Yes, it's the 3 versus 6 seed, but you also just kind of compare the pedigree, right? There's so much experience on that CFO roster, and then you take a look over on the side of MFT. They're still trying to write essays while they're trying to beat people on Summoner's Rift.
I mean, you're not wrong. Literally, they're still university students, and it's incredible to see where they've been able to get to in this league at the same time. And obviously, there is, as you mentioned, a pretty significant gap in the pedigree that both of these teams bring to the table. But CFO also kind of earned their way up to this particular seed by way of pulling off a pretty impressive tiebreaker performance of the likes of Deep Cross. That made all the difference, right? Yesterday, it was 4 versus 5. It was a closer matchup on paper, even though it ended up being a 3-1. Today, I think even a single win on the board for but maybe they can do even more than that. Let's take a look at our playoff bracket and how things have shaken out so far. Deep Cross, as we mentioned, got the first victory over Megabank Beyond Gaming. They go on to face off against PSG next Friday, April the 8th. But for today, we got CFO versus Meta Falcon team. The winner takes on J-Team, and the loser does drop down to face off against Frank Esports in the lower bracket. Now, a little bit of a change-up for those of you familiar to the PCS in previous splits. It is all best of 5. So you see that 3-1, that's not a typo. It is best of 5s all the way through.
Yeah, and that makes these series very, very exciting and also possibly very grueling, right? If you are going to make a lower bracket run, that's so many extra games you do have to play through. And it also means that there's a lot of extra tape on you if you are able to make that climb. So you just kind of want to win 5-head through the upper bracket because it's a lot less stressful, because if you look at the dates for that next match, it is tomorrow that you would play against Frank Esports, right? Whereas if you win today, you have that extra 6 days to prepare for next week's matchup.
Yeah, that does make all the difference. Even if you have a second chance, having to play back-to-back best of 5 is tough. It doesn't really matter what your opponent is. So for both of these teams, it will mean a lot to move on to the next one. CFO, I think while the pressure may be on them, they also certainly have the favoritism going for them this time around. For Meta Falcon team, the squad coming out of university, they did retool a little bit. They made a couple of changes. They brought in Renhao as the primary support. They will be, of course, playing with him today and have been since pretty much midway through the split. On the opposite side, CFO, they retooled a bit themselves, Nightstar, after having Atlan in the roster for most of the split. They bring in Shun off the bench. First time we get to see this guy, and he's already slotted in well to the lane dominant style that Flying Oyster have brought to bear. Let's take a look at that full roster, kicking things off today. In addition to the players we mentioned, we also have the coaching squad, Kayamanachi, to lead this team, they hope, to victory.
Yeah, and for CFO, this was a team that felt like they were lacking a little bit of identity during the early parts of the game. They weren't sure who to actually play through, which is why I liked the swap to bring in Shun. Shun has shown that he is willing to play super aggressive, and that's allowed them to have an avenue of attack during the early phases, be able to just, all right, if we want to make plays, we can make plays towards that bottom lane, because when it comes to their solo laners do kind of like to just keep things in isolation, not have things too volatile.
Yeah, it is interesting. It's kind of an all-star roster, but a lot of these players like to play individually and try to roll through their own lanes without necessarily a whole lot of help. Gemini has taken on so much more of an enabling role in this split. And it did seem like for a while the team struggled to figure out where to put him. He was almost superfluous. But as the league's premier Lee Sin main, he's definitely found a home, helping Shun move forward in the bottom lane, helping CFO to sharpen their point on that really dominating lane kingdom style that they've become known for. But there's no slouches really anywhere on this squad. I mean, you look at the talent and the experience that they all bring. Rest, Gemini, Mission, all very tough opponents. And of course, the upstarts facing off against them today will be Meta Falcon team. It is Taco in the top lane, the 665 in the jungle, Wen in the mid, Whale and Renhao rounding out the bottom side. And of course, the coaching staff is definitely the most experienced. Yes, that is Firefox on that coaching staff. So you have to think that this team has taken some time to prepare some very specific strategies to bring to bear against CFO.
Yeah, and it felt like during the season they were a little bit one-dimensional with their strategies, and I'm not sure if that was whether or not like, hey, let's just try and refine this one style, or if it was more of a we don't necessarily have all the free time in the world because we are trying to balance playing at both a professional level and also trying to get our degree, which can be a little bit difficult to do at the same time since both are very time consuming. But here we are into the stats comparison. It is going to be that mid lane matchup, and for both of these mid laners, it has to be the Galio pick that's going to be the focus in our drafts for this series.
100%. They both love to play the Galio. For Mission, it seems to almost be like another carry for him. We've seen him just delete people with Winds of War, but he certainly uses it to great effect for roaming, getting around the map, and setting up plays for his team. Whereas for Wen, the strategy is similar, but instead of being a damage-dealing threat, he really is part of the Wombo combo initiation that MFT have brought against a number of teams, and they have had a decent level of success. That's why they have this number 6 seed into the playoffs. I think this is a team that, you mentioned them being a little bit one-dimensional, and that was the one dimension. Let's see if they can stretch out a little bit more. I still think the Galio will play a pivotal role in this pick ban.
Yeah, absolutely. And another one of those big numbers that kind of stand out, besides the goal difference at 15, is that jungle proximity, right? And for Mission, he's only had Gemini around for about 15% of the time, but Gemini has been extremely efficient with that time mid, whereas for MFT, they kind of need 665 and Wen to constantly play together to actually be able to enable the rest of the squad.
Yeah, that's something that MFT really need to get online early, and it's going to be tough to survive out against this brutal laning phase that CFO can bring. Into the picks and bans we go, however, for game number 1 here of our playoffs. CFO versus Meta Falcon team. Diana banned away from 665, sort of the quintessential carry jungle on that side of the team. Galio actually banned up by CFO themselves, and also the Syndra Respect banned away from Mission. So Mission is going to have to go onto a different prio. Orianna still available. Not sure if that will draw a ban here from the Meta Falcon team.
Yeah, and I think the Orianna is certainly a pick that MFT really need to look at and evaluate. Maybe they do go ahead and ban it away during the ban phase, but in game number 1, it's kind of fine to leave up some of these picks just to kind of test the water here. And they've opted to say, hey, you know, the Syndra and this Lee Sin, both of these champions are a lot more important for us to take away than that Orianna. And now for CFO, they have a couple of options, right? They can look to lock in the Jinx first pick, or they could go ahead, lock in something. Okay, I was thinking more of the AD carry priorities, but they go ahead, lock in the Volibear because of the fact Lee Sin did get taken off the table, and it is a champion that sort of operates the same way as the Lee Sin, allows you to play very aggressive early on, enables a lot of dive threat early on as well once you hit level 6, and it's, again, a lot more about snowballing that early game and set yourself up for that mid game, just being able to get your lanes ahead.
Absolutely. So CFO give themselves a relatively powerful pick, and now MFT are going to answer back with the Graves. In a lot of teams, we would consider this to be a lock-in for Taco on the top side, but it's not the case for Meta Falcon team. They're one of the few teams that likes to run this out of the jungle, and I do think it remains to be seen what the choice is. Giving some options, usually teams will try for the counter pick top. And this is something you have mentioned, Nightstar. We were talking in the pregame whether we might see the switch up of the AD carries continue and bleed over into the PCS. Misfortune locked in as a blind pick to try and deter the Xayah matchup.
Yeah, and this was a pick I really wanted to see come out from MFT, just because of the fact that they're going to have to rely on a lot of these wombo types of compositions, and MF is certainly one of those champions down in that bot lane that can enable that. However, for the side of MFT, now we need to see some sort of lockdown, some sort of AoE lockdown, whether or not it comes in the form of like maybe an Amumu support. That's something we haven't seen in a very long time, but it could happen, or something like a Malphite in that top lane. For the side of CFO, they've gone ahead, locked in Aphelios and possibly the Nautilus, although that might just be kind of a taunt hover there saying, hey, MFT, most likely you're going to go for this because it does provide that lockdown. But then they go ahead, lock in that Orianna. So we will see Mission get his Orianna here before it goes into that ban phase in the second phase.
For sure. So pretty comfortable picks for the CFO side. It is worth noting that this is actually going to be the first Aphelios game for Shun, as he came in so late, only played the Xayah and the Jinx on this side of the matchup. And you talk about single target lockdown, well, the Leona would fit the bill in some cases. You can get in there and try to make the plays. I wonder how the 2v2 is going to go. And you see that the focus is on trying to turn the bot side away, as Renata Glask is banned out. Koala has been one of the supports in the PCS to play that champion, although not to great effect.
Yeah, but the Renata is going to be very effective to what MFT generally want to conduct their drafts, right? They want to involve a whole lot of dive, and that's a champion that can deter it very, very well. I also expect maybe something like a Rakan banned out here for the side of MFT, because it is another champion that counter punches very well. And I think CFO, when they're put in a more counter punch sort of scenario, that's where they really excel. So I'm looking at either that or the Nautilus banned out here for the side of MFT.
Well, taking their time. MFT are going to actually take a swerve here. They're going to ban the Gangplank out against the likes of Rest. I did want to talk a little bit about Rest, because one champion that we haven't seen hit the ban column at all in the entirety of playoffs so far is the Gwen. It hasn't actually been picked up, and I'm curious to see if Rest is just going to go for it for CFO side. Obviously, he won't get the counter pick, but if MFT show their cards early, he can get himself into a pretty comfortable situation.
Now for the side of MFT, they can go ahead, lock in a mid laner if they want, because they already know the mid lane matchup. I think that's probably best. Or if they have the idea of, hey, we'll go ahead, play something like a Malphite or a Scion here, with some sort of weak side top laner, it would be okay to lock that in here as well. But MFT, they go ahead, lock in the Zoe, so this is going to be a very sort of different champion for Wen, but again, it plays very similar to how they want to conduct themselves, right? Because you're going to be able to when those mid-game team fights do come around, you're going to be able to pop off by picking up summoner spells off the ground and hopefully have those sort of resets potential.
Yeah, the mid-game team fight definitely is looking good for MFT here, but they're going to have to survive that lane phase, right? That's always the struggle.
Yes.
And Wen has not had the greatest track record on Assassin champions. I think the only one he's really won on this split has been the Vex. But we will have to see if he's able to pilot that to some more success here. Last couple of seconds going to tick down for CFO. They've already got the Nautilus locked in to round out that bot lane. And on the blind, they are going to go for the Renekton as they let that one go in. So a bit more of a beefy front line. It does feel like it's going to be a pretty Mission and Shun heavy game as far as damage dealing is concerned. But in the early game, if they can just steamroll, then they don't necessarily need to rely on their scaling.
Right, and now you have some options, right? You could put that Graves into that top lane. It's not a bad matchup into the Renekton. Or right here, you could go for something like a Malphite or a Gragas, which has been really what I wanted to see come out from MFT. Taco, he's played a number of champions from carries to these tanks, and I think a tank really fits this composition very, very well. Of course, Grog is not your typical tank, right? Because we have seen a bit of a shift when it comes to top lane itemization. It's been more of the Everfrost first item into full tank. We'll see what kind of flair he brings out this time around. I fully expect that to be the case, and it gives you a lot more oomph in that mid game, right? Because that first item power spike brings a little bit more magic damage, and it gives you a lot of utility in being able to lock people down with that Everfrost.
Yeah, I think it adds a lot of the front line for them as well, which is something that MFT was going to have a bit of struggle with before. Now, pound for pound, it does seem like on the opposite side, CFO have drafted themselves a pretty solid, in some cases, blind lanes to try and just roll over opposition. But as you mentioned, the matchups that were picked by MFT should be able to hold on. The question is it going to be enough when you compare some of the skills, right? Like, this is a team that MetaFalcon team have not been able to find a win over in the regular split, but they have had a week and some change to prepare themselves. Who do you give it to just on compositions alone?
I think compositionally, I actually do enjoy MFT's comp quite a bit. Really, the only pick that stands out to me that might be a little bit out of place is the Zoe, because you have a whole lot of team fight power, right? But the Zoe is mostly focused on pick potential. But I think they need a little bit of pick power in order to possibly get themselves that man advantage situations against CFO. So all in all, MFT's composition feels pretty good, but at the same time, if it does get to a late game, you do favor the Orianna and the Aphelios.
Yeah, it always feels like there's going to be a bit of timer playing off against champions like that, especially in the hands of Mission and Shun. So we get on to the Rift for game number 1 here of the PCS Spring 2022 playoffs. Still round 1, best of 5s this year. And CTBC Flying Oyster, number 3 seed, looking to find an early win up against the likes of the number 6 seed. The winner of this series will go on to face off against J-Team. The loser drops down, face off against Frank Esports in the lower bracket. But for MFT, yeah, if they can survive the lane phase, that's always a good strategy to beat CFO. This is what teams have been able to do. No early game shenanigans. I'm really curious about this mid lane, especially Nightstar, because Wen has been a bit of a toss-up, and Mission is on an extremely comfortable champion. He kind of plays Orianna a bit like a carry, even in the laning phase, and part of that's just the experience, right? I mean, Mission has been a professional League of Legends player for so many years now. Going back to subbing for high-pay Assassins in 2014. And you compare that to Wen, who's basically a rookie. Yes, he's had a game on a Hong Kong Attitude last year, but, like, it doesn't count. It doesn't count. He's a rookie in my mind.
Yeah, he only had one game, so it's not like he was fully exposed to the PCS at that time, right? It was merely a...
just a taste.
Very much an appetizer. So we'll see how well he's able to perform in this matchup. If he does all right, I think that increases MFT's chances considerably, because the main issue is if Wen does fall a little bit too far behind, or if he demands too much jungle support attention, that these side lanes end up kind of falling apart because you need to prop up Wen a little bit too hard. That's going to be problematic. So if he's able to lane all right here, yes, he might drop or go down in CS, but that's okay as long as he's able to stay safe and stay relatively even.
Yeah, I think that's going to be something we'll have to watch for. Now, 665 in level 3 is going to come in and find Mission. Smokescreen down, forces the flash away. That's actually a pretty good start there for MFT, and Mission just clearly didn't expect him to be coming in at the level 3 mark.
Yeah, and we're seeing that difference in jungle proximity already, right? About 25% coming in for 665 over into that mid lane, and already that's showing. But Wallace here to answer back already.
All right, Wen waiting in the brush. Ward is down,
surprise.
Does spot him, and there we go. Paddlestar going to nail him as well. He's actually out. So this was kind of enabled by the fact that Shun and Koala got a really nice fast push on in the bottom side. But it doesn't amount to anything here. And I suppose maybe CFO can make up for the jungle proximity difference by getting a support proximity difference.
Yeah, and it's going to be a bit of a split map situation now. Gemini turning his attention towards that top lane. This is a path that Taco's not going to know about.
Yeah, Taco relatively safe. He did actually already use his E, and that is going to be the Sky Splitter. Oh dear! Flash is so late, but he does manage to get away under the safety of the tower. That was so close. Taco, what are you doing, man? Don't even bother getting close here. He's got to be so careful for the rest of this exchange, as Rest always has deletion potential, but he does get out and deny the first blood.
Yeah, I feel like he thought that he was close enough to his tower that he would be fine, but then he takes that last burst of damage that all of a sudden he does end up burning the flash there. He did have, of course, that extra potion along with a biscuit coming up, so that's why he's able to stay in lane. And of course, Gragas has fantastic sustain built into his kit, so he will be back to full HP. No issues with that. And now 665 will be back towards that top side to help out his top laner, secure this farm at the very least. And Rest, I mean,
sees it.
Yeah, he's gonna spot out 665, and for the most part, though, MFT first 5 minutes, not too shabby with how things are turning out.
Yeah, every team that plays against CFO needs to try and survive out a landing phase. So yeah, not giving up first blood in 5 minutes, not bad. You actually trade flashes, one in the mid lane versus the one up in the top, overall in the jungle roams. But Gemini kind of got moving real quickly. You even saw him making a move towards bottom lane as he picked up the early Lucidity boots, and he's going to be able to move through the map a lot quicker than 665, who's still running barefoot, actually, as he's going for a more damage-oriented build. Of course, 665 is more of the carry jungle style anyways, so we'll see if he takes a trip down bot here. Looks like Whale and Renhao have managed to stabilize a little bit of a CS differential, but they are going to find the Zenith Blade, a little denied by Shun. They do get the stun off onto Koala. Smokescreen forces the flash now, and Shun turns him back a good amount of counterpoke, but still, they got a summoner out of the support and didn't have to give anything up in exchange.
Yeah, all in all, not a bad turn of events, but now Gemini revisiting this top lane. Can they make this dive happen? It is a level 6 Gragas, one of the most difficult top lane champions to dive.
Taco's needing to hang on to a little bit of mana here, and I think he knew that this was coming. No flash, but he's trying to bait this one out here. That is going to get the start of it. The party cask is coming out. Rest still tanking it up. And that is going to, for the time being, slow this dive down, but he's already used it. He's going to try to clear that up. I think they will. Dragon does go down, and I think Taco might just be sacrificed as first blood goes through. Oh, okay, flashing to juggle a bit of aggro. Bit of a dirty exchange, but they get the kill.
Still, I mean, it was sort of expected that they would try and continue to force that dive attempt, and for the most part, it works out, but Taco being able to burn the jungler's flash there is still something noteworthy, and it will be an exchange of red buffs. The big fear here now is that now that Gemini is level 6, do they go for a very return or early return gank on this top lane? Because Taco still does not have flash up available, and I think we're going to see it happen again.
I think so. Okay, all right. It looks like Gemini and Rest are feeling a little snacky here as they go for Taco round 2. He's got to see this one coming. Doesn't have his cask once again. And, the Sky Splitter into the Stormbringer. This time, Gemini is the one to get the Goomba Stomp off. And you got to start seeing that one coming. 665 way too late to the party. That Bramble Vest honestly didn't look like it protected Taco at all.
Yeah, but 665, hey, he's going to be a benefactor. He gets all of the CS Pyra, so while it is certainly a loss for Taco as MFT are down already 2k, at the very least, 665 feels great. He gets that entire wave. He's not that far ahead. He's only 6 CS ahead, but it is a decent chunk of experience coming in from that extra wave, and now will be CFO getting this first Rift Herald. That certainly gives them options to try and accelerate the game, right? Because you get this Rift Herald, Shun and Koala make the rotation up into this top side, and I feel like they could try and perhaps attempt yet another dive on this top lane, especially with the extra numbers advantage.
Yeah, Shun hits level 6 as well, so Moonlight Vigil going to be available. You actually see Whale and Renhao backing away on the bottom. We might see the counter swap coming in, but this was a much faster move by CFO and unanticipated by MFT. It would be a 2v2 if 665 sticks around here, which he absolutely should do. Still, this time Taco has access to both his flash and his ultimate, so if they wanted to make the play, it's a bit more dangerous. Shun's a little squishy here. I think they're just going to settle for pushing this in. I'm curious to see where the Rift Herald ends up going. It's in the hands of Gemini right now, but they are going to take their time about it. But what's interesting is that nobody's defending bot side. Renhao and Whale backed away and did absolutely nothing.
That is the bigger concern here, Pyra. That they went for the reset, and then they decided that Whale was going to go back bottom, but they decided so late that Rest already farmed himself 2 plates down in that bottom lane, whereas on the flip side, like, I'm perfectly fine with Renhao making that rotation, but apparently they thought Whale had to be there as well, and it ends up just kind of sacking some golden EXP down in that bottom lane, and they also give up those extra plates. So all in all, CFO went out big time, although the gold doesn't necessarily stretch out too far, right? They probably only gained about 200 gold advantage from that exchange, but all eyes are on this next dragon because of the power spike CFO already have. You look at that top lane, like, this is already a hull breaker.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Rest is the one with the hull breaker, and he's going to get dove 1v3. Let's see if he can actually hang out. That's the combo they were looking for as they pull off the pick. And that's nicely done, but here we go. They got to match pressure against Shelly as Taco can't really hold the line on the inner tower. And, man, it's almost like we're watching lane swap meta again.
Oh, but the big problem with lane swap meta was the fact that if your bot lane isn't able to answer with turret pressure of their own, the team that swapped up in the top side, like, they just get massive advantages. So that's what it looks like it's going to be right now for the side of CFO and MFT. They will be able to break this tower at the very least, but they aren't going to be able to get a tier 2. So while the gold is somewhat okay, and I mean, you're perfectly fine sacking a little bit of gold onto a Gragas, right? Because from the build, it looks like he's probably just going to spec straight into full tank.
But look at the power spikes at this point, Nightstar. You've got Shun picking up an 11-minute Gale Force. He hasn't even finished his coal yet. And all those plates bought him so much more, so they actually are going to have an opportunity to really throw their weight around. He's actually going down to the bottom side and cleaning up the farm here. So despite the fact that Whale hasn't really been far behind and actually is doing pretty good with the kill, it does feel like CFO can dictate the tempo for a while. Drake stack not going to be as big early on because the first one was taken by Meta Falcon team, but this second, should CFO want it, seems pretty free, although Meta Falcon team are actually kind of hot on the heels right now. 665 and Renhao coming in. Just going to have to settle to ward this down.
Yeah, it's 12 minutes in, though, so we still don't have Unleashed Teleport. So if they want to come in with a teleport from Taco, he's going to have to teleport to a tower here. So he's just going to walk his way in, and that's a huge ultimate burn. Gemini burning that ultimate early on gives them so much positioning advantage for the side of MFT. And now, looks like they're going to be able to secure themselves this second dragon unless Gemini jumps over.
Okay, he does, but
he does.
And so burning flash to get. All right, well, we'll just pretend we didn't see that one.
He tried.
MFT did a really good job at actually forcing Gemini away. He didn't want to take the chance that he'd get stopped up and end up giving some gold back over to 665. So instead, he burns his ultimate, then half-hearted attempt at the steal, flashes out. So Gemini kind of loses out fairly big on that one. And Meta Falcon team have got a Drake stack of their own with the Mountain Rift coming.
Yeah, and gives them a way out, right? Because now they can play for that Dragon Soul capitalization, and this is also a fantastic Dragon Soul, right? If you get that Mountain Soul onto a champion like Leona, like your Gragas, all of a sudden this Renekton pick is going to have a really hard time to play these team fights, and I think that's why you see Resky has gone for the Hullbreaker, just so he does have that 1-3-1 pressure at the very least, or more of the 1-4 instance for this composition. And that just might be how they try and force their way around for CFO when it comes to this mid game, as plates now fallen off, and that means we have unleashed teleports, and that could mean Taco could look for a big teleport opportunity if the ward setup is there.
Yeah, you talked early on about how there is a little bit of pick potential on this MFT side in the form of Wen Zoe, but Taco can do it as well. If you can get a flanking TP off, as you mentioned, the Explosive Cast can bop a priority target into the waiting arms of MFT. This is the mid game. This is where they should have the most confidence. Despite being down in the gold game, they have the composition that thrives a little bit more in this moment as well. Riftherald actually getting started up by CFO. That should be spotted now that the ward is down. They know Shelly's not there. They know something's got to be up. Question is, are they willing to fight for it? You've actually got Wen going up to the top side. So MFT are the ones that are actually splitting themselves up here as they try to defend on multiple fronts.
Yeah, right now they're set up in more of a 1-3-1 instance, but for MFT, they can't walk up too far.
That's going to be the flash away. Koala does manage to get a knock-up as he pulls the dredge line into the ultimate. Shelly's going to get enabled. That is 665, forced to flash away.
He's out.
But a huge bullet time. Can they capitalize, though? Shun solo. No, he dodges out the Sleepy Trouble bubble. And meanwhile, down bottom, Rest is going to be able to take a tower as well. So CFO get 2 towers. They get out. And they even take 665 with them as well. So close, though. And oh, there we go. It's going to land. But do they have the follow-up? Paddlestar intercepted Shun. Oh, man. He's got to pay his bodyguards double time after that.
Oh, they definitely deserve OT on that one. And now, looks like they still want more.
And how? Okay. No deletion potential. And Wen was actually taking tower shots on that. So MFT, despite the best efforts, they cannot find a kill here in the mid lane. And are gonna just have to settle for chip damage. They lose 2 towers and their jungler.
Yeah, it's definitely rough because all of a sudden CFO, they're out to a 5,000 gold lead. And as we see the replay, 665 just loses track of where that Orianna ball in his, he really makes a bit of a blunder on this positioning. He wants to find a little bit more damage, ends up getting caught out. Mission finds a brilliant catch, and they just have enough damage. But you see the potential of this composition, right? From the side of MFT, they find the return damage, and it was just so close to really turning that around. They even find that Sleepy Trouble bubble at the very end, but great heads up coming in from the jungle support of CFO to be able to block the Palsar afterwards.
Yeah, protect the president for sure there. Shun able to stay alive, and still a low kill game, but the gold lead continues to move in the favor of CFO as they just keep knocking down towers. Rest is becoming an absolute nightmare on the side lane, in addition to having picked up his Hullbreaker. He's, well, okay, I'll talk about that in a minute because, yeah, Blade of the Rune King also going to help him in the side, but Taco's got some troubles of his own here. That's going to be, oh, the Explosive Cast knocking Rest away. They do find Koala and should have just enough with the collateral damage. 665 takes him down. So there's a man advantage here now for MFT, but what can they do with it?
Yeah, and conveniently, though, Pyra, there is a dragon coming up in 10 seconds.
There is.
So now they're going to try and catch out Taco. If they were to get a big chunk onto him, it would be significant because he doesn't have Unleashed Teleport. But it looks like MFT, they've turned their attention towards that mid lane. They're going to get mid lane priority, and now they're going to position themselves to try and find a fight afterwards.
Tried to steal that off the Paddlestar.
Taco
That was
coming
close,
over the wall.
up against the likes of a Smite. Can they take the fight? Rest goes in. Big dominance. Taco's actually going to get taken down here. Shun is forced away, but it doesn't matter as the reset comes through for CFO. They've already got one here. Can they get even more? Slowing them down. Rest still on the front line, and Bit of a disaster for Meta Falcon team. They opt to take the mid turret, but they forfeit the dragon and then lose a kill on the ensuing fight.
Yeah, now when looks like they were trying to chase him down possibly, but yeah, in that instance, Taco ends up going down a little bit due to misposition. He comes in from a great angle, right? But if you look at his itemization, he doesn't quite have that first big tank item, right? He's got a lot of a mishmash at the moment. And because of that, he can't position as aggressively as he would have liked. As you saw in that instance, we'll see it on the replay. He jumps on in, and because he doesn't have quite enough defensive stats, he just blows up immediately. And unfortunately, for the side of MFT, they weren't able to follow up and capitalize on their top laner, trying to buy time on the side.
Yeah, you know, Taco being set so far behind certainly has disadvantages. He still hasn't been able to pick up a full item, not on the Mythic anyways. Rest just
665.
chewing through his health bar there. I mean, that's just like a few autos, pull the meek, all that stuff. It's looking a little bit rough. Meanwhile, in terms of items on the opposite side, Gemini is able to get his Force of Nature here. We're starting to see the 2-item spike coming through for CFO's side. And even though the mid game is where MFT's composition should shine, they're finding themselves losing just little by little on these engages and trying to find catches, not doing enough damage.
Yeah, and now, I mean, CFO, they get themselves that first mountain, so that's going to slow things down as far as dragon stacking goes for the side of MFT, and that's big, right? Because if you are able to deny Mountain Soul, that increases your chances so much. And Mountain Soul's not too shabby for them as well, because on the flip side for MFT, they are running double lethality carries, which means that the extra resistance bonuses are going to be even more impactful for them to cancel out a lot of this lethality coming out from the MF and the Graves.
Oh, gotta be careful not to get pincered here. Gemini was wrapping around. So much vision control that CFO have in the Meta Falcon team jungle here. Now Rest is going to get 1v2'd, but even so, you can see that Flying Oyster just dragging MFT around the map right now, and it's so hard for them to find an answer, to find an opening. It's just a lot of bait and switch, and they're just a little too far behind. It's almost a 7,000 gold advantage for CTBC Flying Oyster. Now they can start to bait out the Baron. They might just start it here. Gemini's tanky enough, and quick blue trinket is popped to spy this out, but they just commit to it. They have an Aphelios. Mission is waiting.
Mission. He's in a perfect position as well to catch people out.
The damage. Does walk away.
Oh,
and it's going to be teleport coming through, but look at that, 665's already out of there to teleport. You can't cancel it, and Taco's in so much trouble. Oh, it's an absolute disaster for MFT right now. Talk about a collegiate team. They are getting schooled, as that's going to be the 2-man shockwave right into the slice and dice. Taco running for the hills. Wen just couldn't find an opener. A quick 3 for CFO, and it's going to be right back on top of the Baron.
And CFO, they just find a fantastic call there, right? You go ahead, you know that you have the damage to take Baron at this point in the game because of how strong your Aphelios is. He also has that Bloodthirster up, so he is able to lifesteal very efficiently. And they just kind of do the Baron dance. MFT, they get sucked in, and with how far ahead Mission is, he just gets a massive chunk out. This positioning from Mission is just perfect. They aren't able to turn onto him, and when you find the initial catch onto 665, that's a lot of their damage removed. And then the teleport coming in from both of these top laners, like when he's not in a position quite yet to help out. Look at how late he shows up to the fight, and by the time he does show up, he's not with his team, and the fight's already over.
We were talking about the Zoe pick and questioning what it was going to be able to do, trying to get picks. He just has been denied pretty consistently here, as CFO just identified that that's a possible threat in those skirmish situations. But their 5v5s have been so much better. Really good flanking teleport there for Rest. He just corrals the rest of MFT in, and now completely zoned away.
Man.
Sure, they get the Mountain Dragon, but they're losing an inner tower. They might even lose an inhib turret.
Yeah, it's just a complete outplay coming in from the side of CFO. They just immediately run straight mid. This might be one of those instances where you just trade Nexus for not even Dragon Soul, but just third Dragon. And CFO, they're going to take so much off of this. They get themselves that mid inhib. But now, can MFT find the fight right after? They are trying to pincer in.
Yeah, Taco, he kind of gives up the ghost, though. Does not really find the opening. Paddlestar lands, just doesn't do much damage as Koala just absorbs it all. Shun is actually caught, and he's forced to burn both of his summoners to try and get away from it. Meanwhile, Taco forced back on rest here, and that is just such a massively tanky Renekton. Does get popped into the team. They should be able to do it. Big shutdown gold. Falls into the pocket of Whale, but right back on top of it with the Baron buff. CFO are going to be making their move up towards the top side. Wen goes forward, takes a little bit of chip damage, and in goes the Volibear, trying to get the slam dunk on. Gets a little denied as Wen stays alive in this one, but they are losing another inhibitor here, Nightstar. Despite Rest dying, CFO walk away with the lion's share of that fight.
And I'm pretty sure they are very pleased with the results, right? They got themselves double inhib. They weren't quite able to get triple inhib because of the fact the rest did end up dying down in that bottom side, but get themselves a whole lot of extra map control. So even though MFT were able to get themselves a third dragon, it's very hard to say that they'll be able to actually get access to the next dragon because of the fact that they're going to be dealing with so many super minions.
Yeah, that's a bit of a risky proposition at the best of times. They've just been so thoroughly shut down in some of these fights. They finally get a huge golden fusion into Whale, but they need him to have a massive grouped up bullet time. The problem is you run the risk of being in the line of sight for Mission's Shockwave. You run the risk of Shun taking you down as well. It's just not going to be easy at the moment. I think they need to find that miracle engage.
This is a very interesting approach here, Pyra, because if we look at Renekton's item build, he has an Even Shroud. He's gone for Even Shroud for his Mythic, knowing that he already has plenty of damage. I'm not sure if this is the purchase, but given how, you know, he's going to be operating, he's basically just a glorified support at this point.
Yeah.
And now we'll see.
I guess at this point, yeah, there's no more side laning when you don't have any more lanes. Oh, Mission gets knocked back. They were hoping to try and knock him into the rest of the team. And it's going to be Nexus Turrets. The 5v5 does not favor MFT. They weren't even going to get into the range to get that Dragon Soul because it's not even going to come up before the game's going to end here. And CFO just bulldozed through the Meta Falcon base, completing the sweep, except Wen just barely gets away, but it doesn't matter because the Nexus is bare. And at 26.5 minutes, they're just going to let the minions do the job and take the game number one here up against the side of MFT in this playoff opener.
Game number one goes into the hands of CFO. It was very clean and clinical coming in from them. So great look for them. Game number one, they didn't have to do a whole lot, but you do like that they were able to just kind of keep things even keeled. They never offered MFT that big opening to give them a chance in this game number one, which is really great look for them moving forward, because we did kind of knock them towards the middle of the split, being very indecisive with their shot calling and being caught out at a couple of points in time, and they gave teams opportunities to take that advantage, but that was not to be in here.
No, CFO really did a great job of keeping Meta Falcon team at arm's length the entire time, denying the Zoe kills, really only giving a handful over in entirety. You can count the mistakes made by CFO in this game on one hand. And you know, Gemini, a little bit of an oopsie over by the Dragon Pit, didn't really end up punishing him. Yeah, he lost his flash and ultimate, but that was fine. So it was a really good start here for CFO. It was, as you said, very clean and clinical. The Even Shroud Renekton comes in the end because, well, you know, you might as well just, when you're living in the base, you don't really need to worry about side laning as much anymore, or trying to get the extra damage out. And just a straight up 5v5 was all it took to close things out. CFO looking great in that game number one, and Meta Falcon team, they're going to have to try something different because it wasn't the draft that sunk them. It was certainly the inability to execute kills.
Yeah, and the rotational play coming in from when in particular was a little bit behind when it came to everyone else, right? They were all there ready to fight, and Wen would be lagging behind 10, 15 seconds. So that was a big issue. But I mean, regarding draft, I didn't have that big of an issue with this MFT draft. So we'll see how they change things up. Maybe they go back towards the Rise, right? Because that is a pick that can gap close to the rest of the team a little bit faster than something like a Zoe. And also, what do we do about this Orianna pick, right? Because we left it up in game 1 to test the waters, and I think we might need to ban it away in game number 2.
Yeah, and the Syndra and potentially the Galio. They will have side selection for game number 2 as a result of that loss, so we'll see if they flip it over, go to blue side. We'll, of course, find out on the other side of the break. But yeah, I think CFO, they feel pretty confident. They didn't have to show too many cards in all of that. Got themselves some fairly favorable picks, and the blind matchups worked out well. And at the end of the day, it kind of felt like map diff. It kind of felt like hands diff in a few cases.
Yeah, and I mean, it was just CFO being able to execute around what they needed to do. They had some early ganks up there at top side because of 665. Wanted to just say, all right, if you want to split the map, I'll take the handshake. So he ended up playing a lot more towards farming that bot side jungle, and Gemini was very willing to go ahead and dive Taco. That early advantage given over to the Renekton was really utilized very well in gaining split map pressure, which the side of MFT just weren't able to deal with.
I do like that we got to see a focus towards top side for CFO, because we did talk about how this was a team that when they had Atlan on the roster kind of struggled to find a lane to play through. And in this instance, they identified they can play through top, they can shut down Taco. He did a decent job at trying to repel the initial gank, but it just kept happening over and over again. And at a certain point, the Gragas just kind of became really, really less than helpful for the side of MFT, and the Renekton was able to just bully him into submission. So this is how the gold game went. It was kind of an elliptical stepladder after a little while, and even though the Misfortune pick did do some solid work there for Whale, it just wasn't enough. I don't think the draft was as much of a problem. I agree with you, Nightstar. I do think that Zoe may have been a bit of a head-scratcher, and I would like to see something that fits a bit more with the team fighting centric composition that MetaFalcon team typically like to do, or at least I'd like to see when moving a little faster around the map, because you can't get away with that.
Yeah, you certainly can't get away with being a little bit too far behind on the play when you have a champion that doesn't have an easy way to gap close towards the fight. Now, if it was something like a TF, it could be a little bit more excusable, right? Because you can jump a whole lot of distance with your ultimate, but that's not the case for Zoe. We'll see how the draft ends up changing up, but I mean, if MFT decides to swap over to blue side, maybe they take a look at trying to deny away the Orianna first pick themselves. That could be their answer to all of this, but it also opens up for the possible Lucian pick, which Mission has picked up in the past, and it is very good into the Orianna.
Yeah, Mission's somebody that you have to be very careful dealing with. You know, that was a matchup that we thought might be a little bloodier just because of the way he plays this Orianna, but it was a much more quiet mid lane. He gets, ganked early on, but he survives, and he earns the MVP award for this game, because when it counted, the shockwaves were right on point.
Absolutely. He just played, he had a rough start to the lane phase, right? Because he had to burn that flash early on, but afterwards it was really just a lot of rainbows. Because when it came to those 5v5s, it's so hard to deny the Orianna her pick of the litter, especially a player of Mission's caliber. So very well played from Mission here as he takes away the MVP of game number 1, and I definitely think there will be a lot of attention paid towards Mission in draft starting from game number 2.
You have to think that MFT are going to be focusing on that lane, but we'll have to find out on the other side of this break. We will be right back after a few.